Welcome to Ty's Daily Market Update. I'm Ty Wong reporting from New York, and it is Monday, July 27th. You would imagine that the U.S. and Iran are apparently trying to talk at least, and both sides have pulled back from strikes over the weekend. And you would imagine with oil a lot lower that stocks would be a lot higher. Well, it did start out that way, but it didn't last. So basically a sell-off in the chip makers, particularly Nvidia down 5%, is overshadowing a decline in oil prices. So stocks are, we're up almost 1% at one point early, and now are down just a little bit. A gauge of semiconductor stocks sank 4%. The cost of protecting Nvidia's corporate debt against credit default swaps surge on a fresh round of AI infrastructure deals. There was also ASML fell because a Chinese state-backed firm is producing certain chip-making machines that could threaten its sales. When we have more details on that, I will talk about it. And this is a week with more than its fair share of potential surprises. But the Morgan Stanley analyst said, a bullish response to strong MAG7 earnings isn't a given, especially if AI spending levels continue to raise eyebrows. So, obviously we have 4 MAG7 names reporting on Wednesday and Thursday, and they're going to be important, but there's no guarantee that if they beat, the stocks will do well. They're going to actually look and see how much they're going to spend on capital expenditure. Now, somebody else said that, stocks should be headed higher once the Iran conflict is definitely over, fully over. Don't know when that will be. Is this, we talked about it last week. Is this a taco? Not certain. I don't, we'll have to see what happens if the talks don't come to anything. So where are we? S&P down 0.2%, SK down 7%, quite a lot, 140. This is on the back of chip makers lower. Bonds are higher, yields a little bit lower. The dollar actually remains mostly unchanged. Precious metals are higher, but only a little bit. They were a lot higher earlier, a big amount higher earlier. Crude oil, as you can see, down 7 to 8%, depending on whether it's WTI or Brent. Gasoline and heating oil down as well. And crypto is a little bit mixed. I think, when stocks were higher, it was doing well. So we'll have to, see how we end up today. I don't know if we're going to make any big moves with the Middle East and with the Fed on Wednesday. Okay, Brent. Remember we talked about, on Friday, this candle here, it was down 5% with speculators cutting just in case peace broke out and you get a big gap down. Well, you know what? Peace didn't break out, but I mean, the ceasefire is enough to drive, we opened substantially lower here, and this is Brent, right? You can see the top of this candle, and it's down 11% today. That's why, you sometimes you cut some risk over the weekend, particularly if you've ridden this all the way up, you took some profit on it, otherwise you would have lost it all. So, we'll see how it goes. Gasoline and diesel both down 2.5%, a little milder of a move down than crude. Gasoline prices, they're basically unchanged from Friday. I think if the ceasefire lasts, it will creep down sort of slowly. It's going to take a while. Probably take a week to get down below $4, if not even a little bit longer. So here is the chart of the S&P cash. Open higher, we're down a little bit here. You can see that comm services, that's Google basically, is doing well. But energy and technology, are both down, so it's dragging the entire index a little bit. I mean, it gave back overnight gains very quickly, which is not a great signal. Here is the S&P futures 1 minute. I'm using futures instead of cash because that's a continuous thing. So here's the Friday close. It gaps up, 0.5% on the open 6 p.m. on Sunday. Trades a bit higher, but then when cash opened, and cash is usually retail, when they had a chance to sell cash, they gave it back and more in like 70 minutes. This whole thing down here took 70 minutes. So it says that the market is still worried, particularly about chips, particularly about capital expenditures. Okay, here's the thing that that I think helped trigger it. So the Wall Street Journal reports that Nvidia is in talks with OpenAI to guarantee $250 billion financing for a huge data center. So Nvidia is going to backstop or guarantee $250 billion for OpenAI to buy or lease a part of a huge data center project in Ohio. It would be one of the most ambitious financial transactions for AI. So basically, the guarantees from Nvidia would help OpenAI lease a 10 gigawatt project that SoftBank's energy subsidiary is developing in southern Ohio. The whole project would cost more than $500 billion, including the chips that would go inside of data centers. It will be the largest data center project announced to date. It's important because it's on I think it's on federally owned land, or it's federal land that the federal government is going to acquire. Was an ex-uranium site or something like that. The power for the project controlled by the U.S. government, funded by Japan. The U.S. government will determine who gets some of the power. Now, this is really important because there's a lot of circularity in this. I think that makes people nervous. Nvidia would allow the soft data center developer to raise debt on more favorable terms than it could if OpenAI had no financial backer. It's basically, if your child wants to take out a loan to buy a car or buy whatever it is, the parent, or even rent an apartment, the parent can sign on as a guarantor with saying if the kid can't pay, the parent will pay, and that will make they basically make it possible. And also, if you're financing something, make it cheaper. And that's exactly what Nvidia is doing for OpenAI, because OpenAI is not yet profitable, and it doesn't have an investment grade credit rating. So AI companies are desperate to secure chips and power needed to run their models, so they don't have to rent it from places like Amazon Web Services and other things like that. So mega projects that have government support and guaranteed power is really increasingly attractive. So this $250 billion guarantee would cover the data center lease and debt needed to fund the build out, but not the chips that would go inside it. So this is, in some ways, it's like, imagine a home builder lending you money so you can buy their house, because otherwise you can't afford to buy their house. There is some risk to the home builder. And as we can see, Nvidia has $30 billion invested in OpenAI. They're also discussing a deal to finance the chip purchase for OpenAI that goes in there, which could total $350 billion. And it's these circular funding arrangements that's, we start talking about in October, November, that have caused concerns that the industry is vulnerable, investor sentiment shifts, or growth slows for the AI company. So here's the Kimi stuff that we saw last week. If these AI companies don't make money, then these big guys who invested in them are on the hook. Which is why there is always some, real possibility, I don't know how big, that the hyperscalers, the Googles, the Amazons, who've invested a lot of money, could end up owning AI. One of our guests said that Google might be the big winner. So Nvidia too might end up owning some of these guys, or take a big equity stake if they can't pay back. So huge data center, 10 gigawatts of electricity, power several million homes, take many years to complete. And this is important to the administration because, there's also some circularity in here. Japan's investing $33 billion in a natural gas project on federal land and in Ohio. So we're basically helping you, and you help us. So, essentially, this proposed structure is a shift on how the largest AI build-outs are being financed. Investment-grade technologies using their balance sheets as a credit wrapper to help smaller companies borrow money, at better rates. Google has backstopped some data centers for Anthropic in ways so Anthropic is going to buy some more of their in-house AI chips, their TPUs or tensor processing units, which have turned out to be pretty good for inference, though they're not necessarily for training. Now, Nvidia did say that, in its most recent annual report, Nvidia warned that data center funding arrangements could lower its near-term cash flows because they're investing and increase its exposure to customer credit risk. So OpenAI, Anthropic, the people who buy from them, well, you have more risk because you've lent money to them. You basically lent money to the home buyer to buy your house. So Taking a look at Nvidia, down 5% today. I mean, the red line is the 100-day moving average. I don't think Nvidia is going to collapse. The forward PE is, I think, in the high teens, and they're going to continue to make money at least, this year and probably all of next year. Increasing their earnings sharply, right? So, this hiccup probably goes sideways with a potential to go higher. Now, their earnings are a little bit later. Their last earnings was May 20th, so it'll probably be mid-August before they report again. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. Okay, a couple of interesting political things. Trump to Axios in an interview, he told Axios that he's decided to pause U.S. strikes on Iran in order to give negotiations another chance. This is why oil is down so much. We're in very deep talks with Iran. This is what Trump always says. If they don't work out, we will go back to very strong military action. Asked how long he's willing to give diplomacy, the president said, not much time. Either it goes fast or not at all. I have nothing gained and nothing lost. Somebody else said, reported that Trump said, well, we have plenty of time. But Trump noted that oil prices dropped and the stock market went up after he paused the attack. So he's certainly watching that and thinking about it. You know what? I don't know how long the pause is going to be. We talked last week that he's been very frustrated. I think he continues to be. We'll have to see. Okay, this is really interesting. The Telegraph reports that Ukraine hit an Iranian cargo ship in the Caspian Sea. Not normally something they would hit. They're not at war with Iran. They're at war with Russia. But basically, President Zelensky wanted to make a point. The ship was carrying military cargo between Russia and Iran. Iran has been supplying Shahed drones to Russia for its war against Ukraine. But now apparently Russia is fitting them with powerful jet engines and is believed to be sending them back to Iran to use against the U.S. Zelensky said that Russian satellites have been monitoring U.S. bases and helping the Iranians to coordinate strikes. And 3 or 4 American troops were killed last week. So I think this is a way Zelensky is showing that Russia and Iran are partners and is not good for the U.S. And it will help perhaps the U.S. or Trump support him. So pretty smart. Okay. Quick look at the Fed. Unchanged from the likelihood that the Fed hikes on Wednesday is unchanged from Friday at 38%. I think that is too high. I would be very, very surprised if they moved. We have a lot of earnings this week. LMVH is down today. I think they beat earnings and they beat a little bit on revenue. I think the market didn't really like it. A lot of different ones, consumers and industrials on Tuesday, Microsoft and Meta on Wednesday, the big ones, and SK. Thursday we have Apple and Amazon, and Friday we get the oil boys. Let's see how Exxon and Chevron are going. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again tomorrow.